Now, I thought it was going to take more time, but Matt Campbell's already made a statement on the recruiting trail.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
My name is Zach Seyko, your host of the show. As always, welcome into Locked On Nittany Lions. Pat Koerbler of Black Shoe Diaries is here to talk all things Penn State recruiting today, because we're going to talk about how Matt Campbell is having the Lettermen back in droves. It seems like they're all over campus all the time now. Well, why that is a great thing. Why that is actually one of the better things that Matt Campbell could have picked up here with Penn State. We'll get to that later, but just talking about the class of 2027, they got to commit in the class of 2028. Honestly, Pat, it's the caliber of commits that they're getting. It's the caliber of recruits that they're courting at this point in time. But I thought they would take some more time to get to this point, right? I thought that, hey, the recruiting boom, the wave would happen over the summer. And we're talking about this at the end of March, in early April, right? When all of this started.
Yeah, I've always been a guy that I always thought that James Franklin, like the recruiter, like, oh, he's an elite recruiter. I always thought that was a little bit overrated. He was a much better developer than he was a recruiter. Penn State certainly had some great classes. You think back to 2018, the Micah Parsons, Justin Shorter, Ricky Sade class. You think back to 2022 with Drew Aller and Nick Singleton, Katron Allen.
Well, if you mention some of those names, be careful with the better developer. But I'll let you go. Go for it.
That's what I'm saying, though, right? Some of those, like the high impact, the highly ranked classes weren't necessarily the ones that always like hit. It was, you think back to his 2014 class when it was Trace McSorley and Grant Hanley and Christian Campbell.
Barkley.
Yeah, right. These lower 3-star guys that were some of the hits. My main point being that Penn State, for as much as I know that, people can kind of complain about, where Penn State stands in the grand scheme of things of what their brand is, is Penn State capable of recruiting at like a top 5 level? Like, listen, State College is not for everyone. Like, it is not a city. It is not 30 minutes from Philadelphia or New York or wherever. But Penn State itself, I do think, even in this NIL era, right, where a lot of people care about Penn State football and are going to make sure that we don't completely fall off, I do think that Penn State kind of puts itself in, I don't want to say like a top 15 class floor, but I do think as long as you have like a semi-competent head coach and things aren't, going too poorly with the program, that you are going to generally get top 15 classes. So I'm a little bit surprised that Campbell is already, I don't
So this should be expected, is what you're saying, because Matt Campbell is capable, is competent. The Penn State brand. See, because I know recruiting's all about relationships, right? It's not that, oh, Matt Campbell and his recruiting abilities are shocking. And I think that might be how some people are going to interpret that, oh, Zach's questioning who Matt Campbell is as a recruiter. I know generally speaking, people were saying that Matt Campbell, how is he going to recruit at a brand like Penn State? It was really about the timing of relationships. Again, when you go into Pennsylvania and you have to dominate the state, you have to win in Pennsylvania. And I know they're getting recruits from all over the place, but it's the way that, you are meeting some of these prospects for the first time. Like Landon Blum and Carter Blattner. I know they had a prior relationship with someone like Landon Blum because they were recruiting him over at Iowa State. But both of those guys committed on their first visit to Penn State. That speaks volumes to me, that Matt Campbell is pushing past that understanding that, okay, relationships and recruiting, they're going to take time. And he's bulldozing all past that and convincing guys to commit immediately here.
I'm not saying that relationships are not the most important part, but I do think, like, for example, Carter Blattner, like a Jersey kid, like, I think that there's just naturally this, like the Penn State brand, like, okay, the Penn State brand nationally is not probably what it is for Michigan or Ohio State, right? If you show the Penn State logo to a kid in Texas, it's not going to mean the same that it does for, if you show Alabama or you show USC or even if you show Oregon. But for someone like Carter Blattner, a Jersey kid, like
regional.
Yeah, that the Penn State logo itself is going to mean a lot. So for Matt Campbell, right? Like, that was one of the questions of how will Matt Campbell be able to recruit? Like, I don't know. It gets a little bit easier to recruit when you're walking into a high school and you're wearing the Penn State logo on your chest and you're in Pennsylvania or New Jersey compared if you're Matt Campbell in Iowa State and you're having to go down to Texas or you're going to,
Ames,
Minnesota
Iowa. It's tough to recruit to Ames, Iowa.
It's just a little bit different, right? The same way that basketball recruiting, right? Wearing the Penn State basketball logo doesn't mean a whole lot in Philadelphia like it does for if you're Duke or North Carolina. Not to say that Penn State is, Duke basketball or North Carolina basketball, but Penn State's one of the top 12-ish, top 15 jobs, like especially regionally. Like there is a floor with Penn State given Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, even Virginia and Ohio. There's a lot of kids that are around here that are within this 4 to 5 hour radius of Penn State, and the logo still does mean a lot. So not to take anything away from Matt Campbell and his coaching staff, because yes, his relationships like definitely absolutely matter, but I would always joke about like during like the James Franklin era, like sometimes you just had, I would call them like paterno prospects, being that Adam Bredeman was somebody that I always said this about. Like, yes, Adam Bredeman committed to Bill O'Brien, stay commit through James Franklin. Adam Bredeman, you could have put him in 2002. Like he was always going to go to Penn State. Cooper Cousins was always going to go to Penn State. Yep. Not saying that Cardinal Blattner was like that level, but you do have those type of prospects in the Northeast where it's just like Penn State is the big brand. Penn State is the main school, and that's where they go. So yeah, it helps to be a big brand in football is my main point.
So Penn State being Penn State, and that was the idea, is that you couple, because if Matt Campbell could recruit to Iowa State and to Ames, Iowa, and you didn't have the same kind of resources there, you put him at Penn State. So maybe this should have been expected sooner. I'm surprised that we're already seeing the wave. They're in contention for a 5-star quarterback, if not potentially. And then if they don't get him, it's within the realistic realm of possibilities that they're going to land a top 10 quarterback as a consolation. And it's at that point, it's like, whoa, right out of the gate here. Some people would say, well, wait till 2028. And I think we're seeing it now. We're seeing it earlier than I anticipated. In spring season, there's still more practices to go to. You still have blue-white weekend. It's not the blue-white game. It's blue-white weekend. But there are more opportunities for Matt Campbell to win, and we're not even to summer official visits yet. So that is impressive. That's the statement that's been made here, that it didn't take all the way until summer for OVs, that they're doing this now after just a few months. And again, it's not like he was hired and ready to go in October before National Signing Day. He was hired after National Signing Day, and just great start for him in terms of recruiting at Penn State. Well, we talked about how the class of 2027 is taking shape. There are 6 commits in total in the Matt Campbell era, and there's also a number of elite prospects that they're in great standing for. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Nittany Lions.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. UCLA made history by winning its first NCAA Women's Basketball National Championship, dominating South Carolina 79-51. The Bruins controlled the game from start to finish with elite defense and balanced scoring, finishing the season 37-1. Star center Lauren Betts was named Most Outstanding Player, leading a team effort that capped a 31-game winning streak. Under head coach Corey Close, UCLA secured a landmark title that has been decades in the making. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Pat, I think we should start at quarterback and then just kind of throw out some of the other prospects that, Penn State is making waves with. Guys that have already committed at this point. We've mentioned Landon Blum, Carter Blattner, cornerback, obviously Terry Smith. And Terry Smith deserves a lot of credit there, being the constant at Penn State. So I'm not surprised that Terry Smith got on the recruiting board first with back-to-back, technically 4 in a row commits at cornerback, because all the connections are established, everything, right? Relationships matter in recruiting, but it's now, okay, you get that star. I think Blum can be a star wide receiver. And Blattner, talking to a New Jersey recruiting expert that I know personally, he says Blattner's underrated. That is a really good commit for Penn State. And then you add in these cornerbacks that Terry Smith is getting, and then look at that, you're in contention for a 5-star quarterback. If you don't get him, you're in contention for another top 10 quarterback who's visiting as we speak right now. Will Mencl's the 5-star, and Peter Bourque is the 4-star. But kind of your takeaways here from who they have committed and who they're still targeting.
Yeah, I know that, there were some jokes on, Twitter or the internet about, out of the 5 commits that they have, like
he's a 3-star.
Yeah, right. The 3-star. I'm really not saying this just like from a Penn State perspective. I say this for like literally any school. Like these rankings don't mean anything right now. Like I saw somebody, I don't remember, maybe it was under one of your posts. I don't even know where it was, but they took a screenshot of Jay Timmons. He's a 5-star cornerback that enrolled at Ohio State from Pittsburgh, was committed to Indiana at one point. Florida State ended up at Ohio State. And somebody took a screenshot and was like, we need to be getting 5 stars like this, not 3 stars. Jay Timmons was a 3-star last year this time, literally. So it really does not matter right now. Like, just especially with the transfer portal, like a lot of these recruiting websites are a little bit behind on, getting ranking updates out. So
there's a ton of players that you have to scout. Like I get the timing of it, and I'm always going to trust if the assistant coach takes a commit.
And Terry Smith in particular.
Yeah. He's a 3-star by the recruiting service, which is behind. But how about the guy that is paid millions of dollars? Because recruiting experts, you can be wrong about a prospect. You can say that they're going to be good, and then they underwhelm a little bit. Maybe they're still good, but they're not to that 5-star level. As an expert, you can be wrong. But if you're an assistant coach, you don't get that same luxury. So if they take a commit, it is because they think he's a legitimate player.
Yeah. And no, just to go back to speak on kind of like where Penn State is trending, even though, right, some of these 3-star guys, I think will end up 4-star guys, and we'll look back on someone like Samaje Robinson. Like, I think he's probably going to end up a top 200 kid. He's probably going to end up a top 150 kid potentially. Yeah. So even if he's a 3-star right now, again, not that big of a deal, but kind of talk about some of the guys that we're looking at. You mentioned the quarterbacks, Will Mencl, Arizona kid, 5-star, I believe, on some sites, 4-star on others. Peter Bourque, Massachusetts kid, right? Top 100 quarterback. It's a good spot to be in for Penn State, where, they're probably like top 3-ish for Will Mencl. And Peter Bourque, it seems like they're really, really trending in the right direction. And when you look at this 2027 class, like missing on Keeman Spell, that's a tough one. They just missed on big time Connecticut defensive end Mekhi Brown. He visited Penn State, and then the following day he didn't have Penn State in his top 5. Those things are going to happen. But one of the nice things is potentially getting someone like Peter Bourque, because the actual depth of the class matters for sure, but it also does help to have the top 100 quarterback, the top 100 running back, the top 100 wide receivers.
There are other elite running backs. It wasn't just Keeman Spell or bust. There's other top
down in South Carolina. Yeah, right. Plenty of guys out there. So kind of just looking what's down the pike. We'll see what happens with Peter Bourque. South Dakota tight end Cooper Tailwilliger, I believe is how I pronounce his last name.
Tailwilliger, yep.
Big time kid. A lot of ties to the staff. Khalil Taylor, a one-time Penn State commit at wide receiver. He's a top 100 kid that it seems like things are trending in the right direction. An Oklahoma linebacker. Last time Penn State's had an Oklahoma player, I don't know if ever, but Case Alexander, his brother's currently at Penn State.
Cooper,
he's another guy who seems like things are trending well. Again, brother being here is a good thing, but Oklahoma's still a long ways away. And then at cornerback, Terry Smith is just going to take as many corners as he wants. Keyshawn Telfair from Ohio. This is a guy that I think, once again, is top 150, top 100, super athletic kid, and just is like exactly like the Terry Smith prototype of like just a freak athlete, but just a good football player too. So yeah, people are getting their load of jokes off about, oh, you got an 87 3-star from New Jersey or whatever. The rush for Penn State is not ending. I think it's just beginning. So yeah, I know before I was saying like, the Penn State brand deserves a lot of credit, and it definitely does, but credit to Matt Campbell and his staff, because I don't want to say I'm like shocked by the timing of it, but it is a little bit earlier than I expected that they would go on this run, especially after how quiet they were. The fact
that's my point. Yeah.
2 weeks ago, they didn't even have a commit, and now they're trending towards maybe having 10 prospects by the end of April. So that's a testament to what they built.
And now it's not really so much about, quantity is great, right? I want to see this recruiting class, to get to max capacity, whether if that's 30, 35, is that 40 prospects, right? Are we thinking that? Because I know I've talked to another recruiting expert that says, hey, it might be worth Penn State taking that many prospects at the end of the day. Okay, so be it. But what about, because you mentioned the depth, but what about the elite players? Okay, so you mentioned Mekhi Brown is going to go somewhere else. Keemon Spell's committed to Georgia. You want to focus on quarterback, because I do think, especially with what Penn State has at quarterback moving forward, and it's not a diss to Alex Mansky, it's honestly a concern. What's his long-term health look like? What does that do to his development? Because we get this ambiguous report that he's going to be out for a while. Okay, is he going to be back in time for fall camp? I guess we can get more specifics later on, but we know he's hurt. We know he had an off-season procedure, and we don't know when he's going to be back and what he's dealing with. So there's an opportunity if Alex Mansky doesn't bounce back right away, right? That's a starting quarterback job that is completely wide open in 27. And if you're Will Mencl, if you're Peter Bourque, that should be appealing, that you can come in as a true freshman and start right away at Penn State.
Yeah, I think if you look at Penn State's perspective, they've kind of put themselves, at least I think, just based on what we know about Matt Campbell, that they don't want to do the quarterback dance in the portal every offseason the same way that we've seen Miami.
Portal roulette.
Yeah, right. And now, granted, Miami's had a lot of success with it. Cam Ward was a very good quarterback for them. Carson Beck, say what you want about Carson Beck, but he did get them to a national title game.
They got there.
Yeah, right. Now getting Darian Mensah. I don't know if Penn State wants to go down that road of like you said, like playing the quarterback roulette. So landing a guy like Peter Bourque, landing a guy like Will Mencl, I think that will be vitally important. And that's probably something that they're preaching to these kids, because like Will Mencl, for example, is looking at Oregon. Bo Nix was a transfer. Dante Moore was a transfer. Oh, yes, Dante Moore. It was a transfer after one season. He was coming to Oregon. We can get into the whole story. But I do think Penn State wants to keep themselves in the spot of, we recruit quarterbacks, especially out of high school, and we develop them. And yeah, to have someone like Peter Bourque or to have someone like Will Mencl potentially join the class and say, okay, we're going to develop you, but we're also going to give you a shot to start next year is I think a really good pitch.
Timing is everything, but again, Penn State, new coaching staff at a new place, and they're after a top 10 quarterback and conservatively a top 5 if you're going off of the industry rankings between Will Mencl and Peter Bourque here. So we'll wrap things up in recruiting, but I think this is part of the recruiting conversation about how the Lettermen are all over campus, and that is a great thing, and it should have always been the case. We're going to get to that next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines are stacking up, your inbox is overflowing, and that one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure is on and you need to make the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you are looking for, whether that's skills, experience, maybe it's location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It is you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It is people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. Now, I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. So Pat, I just want to wrap things up with recruiting, because you mentioned, just this is quickly to go off of the names you said. Trey Segura, we've already covered quarterback with Will Mencl and Peter Bourque. It's a need, in my opinion, for Penn State. You need to get a commitment from Khalil Taylor. He was committed once upon a time. He's one of the top guys in Pennsylvania that's not Keemon Spell. I would say that he's the and then there's Maxwell Hiller. So he'd be the third best prospect potentially, right? To each their own. But Khalil Taylor, who could be a factor in the rotation at wide receiver, I think pretty early on. I'd say the same thing about Matthew Gregory. I think those two are a must since they're out of the state of Pennsylvania, and they're both guys that could play right away. You add that in with Landon Blum, you get a really solid trio for 2027 if you can do that. You mentioned Cooper Terwilliger, and good news about him. I saw that Nebraska recruiting insider had flipped his prediction for him to end up with the Cornhuskers to go to Penn State. I was always worried about Notre Dame since they started to get into the mix here recently. But if a Nebraska guy is saying, I like where Penn State stands, then I'm going to go with that because he's on the other side of it, right? And
Pat Koerbler intel on that. I quote tweeted the Nebraska guy who did that, and I did the Matt Campbell with the lasers. And there might have been a prospect who liked my tweet. I'm not going to say what prospects liked it, but there might have been a prospect from South Dakota that liked the Matt Campbell lasers tweet. So I don't know. We'll see. That's all I'll say. I don't want to blow up anyone's spot. But
I guess you're going to have to infer what all of that means there. But Penn State. And then you mentioned Keyshawn Telfair. So this is kind of the immediate, but this Blake Betton, I think, should go along with Case Alexander at linebacker. So that's kind of the immediate of guys that I wouldn't be surprised if they commit to Penn State sooner rather than later. So that's and then official visits will change a lot of things as well for those. But those are the prospects that you should keep an eye on for the short term. And then we get to, 2 months from now, we're going to get to official visits, and then things will really start to roll in pretty quickly there. Pat, I think this is a big deal for recruiting. Some people might say it's not, or what's the point, or should we be talking about this? The Lettermen coming back and the Penn State social accounts promoting it and everything. I guess, is this an opportunity to dunk on James Franklin? Maybe, because he wasn't doing this. He wasn't having the Lettermen back like this. Well, Dan Connor is on staff. Jordan Lucas was on staff. Alan Zamitis was on staff. And I know I'm going to, Trace McSorley, right? Before having some of his former players, right? Okay, so Trace McSorley on staff, Dion Barnes, I know, not a former player of his. So there were some, the alumni were around, yes, but not to this level. I like that there's basically an open door policy where they can come and go as much as they want. And I can definitively tell you that was not the case under James Franklin. And that, because of what Penn State is and stands for and the legacies and everything, this is how it should be, where the alumni can, and they're not interfering. And I think this goes along with recruiting, to talk to Kajana Carter as a running back, to talk to Kerry Collins as a quarterback, and have them show you some pointers and, text messages and all that stuff. That is a big deal to me. Like, I'm talking, I don't think this is an overreaction. I think this is something that can help Penn State significantly with the Matt Campbell era.
It's funny that you say the open door policy, because I don't know what James Franklin's policy was, but
that's how it looks. I'm not, that's my description of what I'm seeing so far, is that alumni are more welcome to come around and associate with the team. This is not really, it's a coordinated schedule. What's your plans in 3 month type of deal. That's what it felt like previously. Did it not?
Yeah. So I think kind of where the so one, we do have to say, when James Franklin was hired was a much different time at Penn State University compared to now, right?
This is true.
He was, told to distance himself from some of the past, whether that was right or wrong, I don't know. But I think the thing with James was, like, I remember there being a video, and don't remember what game it was. Maybe it was Michigan 2017. Maybe it was a whiteout game. And Jared Audrick came back. And in the video, it was probably like Lions 24/7 he took it. In the video, you can see James saying to Jared, like, give us a chance. So I don't doubt, like, James is not a dumb person. I don't doubt that James did not try to get Lettermen involved and have them come back. But it's funny that you say it was an open door policy. My guess is that it was an open door policy, but that is a lot different than what Matt Campbell is doing. Okay, Matt Campbell, I'm sure has an open door policy too, but it's this coordinated, scheduled effort to be like, guys from the 60s and 70s, you're coming in this, these 3 or 4 days. The guys in the 80s, you're coming in this, and we're making it all about you when you're here, rather than. I almost compare it to like, I don't know if you've ever been in a job where it's like you have, you have PTO. Some companies do like you have unlimited PTO. That's like a fake. It's like, like you have as much as you want, but not really. Almost everyone ends up taking less PTO than if you just said, hey, you have 24 days. That's almost what I'm guessing like that open door policy felt like to some of the Lettermen with James Franklin, where it was like, oh yeah, you guys can come whenever you want. But don't
step on anybody's toes.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a little bit different having like an invitation, right? It's almost like it's almost like if you have a friend and they're like, yeah, you can come over like any weekend, or you can come over any day after work. Like, it doesn't matter. Versus the friend who's like, hey, here are 3 dates that work great for me. You can come over 2 to 7. We'll do a whole thing, right? It just seems like what Matt Campbell did was be very like specific with what he wanted to do these weekends. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these Lettermen go out and say like how great they are. And let's be honest with ourselves. Like, I think that James's bravado, especially at the beginning of his Penn State tenure, it was just much different than a lot of those guys were used to, especially from the Paterno era. And Campbell certainly, I think, just fits that vibe more. So I don't want to trash James Franklin about this. I think that he tried his best and he was in a weird spot, but I think that this should much more be about what Matt Campbell is doing rather than what James Franklin did or did not do, because Matt Campbell is someone who deserves, the credit for this, not James doing anything wrong, but Matt Campbell doing something extremely right.
I agree. And that's the thing. I agree with you that the circumstances play a significant factor in it. And then that probably created this trickle down effect where over time, it's just kind of who wants to be the first one to cave, so to speak, if there were differences, right? That, the one side of non-James Franklin players that were Lettermen, felt some type of way about how they were treated. And then James Franklin didn't want to be the one to admit fault, right? You don't like being the person that admits fault. And I think that's what kind of carried on a little too long. So I know there are tons of other factors here, but also as the head coach of the program, is it not your job to try to make amends?
No, you're right with that. And once again, like, I'm just kind of, I just think that like Matt Campbell deserves credit for kind of being progressive with this, like scheduling the weekends and really
being
making
innovative,
about these guys
innovative.
Yeah, rather than it's like, oh, just come for a visit and you're just there to watch. Like,
exactly,
they're not just there to watch practice. They're there to talk to the team, to go to the meetings, to be as involved as possible. So. Just a credit to Matt Campbell more than anything. I mean, I am interested to see how, because this is like the first time we've really ever had this at Penn State, where for 50 years every Letterman had like that tie to one coach. Like, now you like Saquon Barkley, he's a Franklin guy. Go through the years, like,
will we see him back?
And I know that Saquon in particular did say like, I'm a Penn State grad, or maybe he didn't say Penn State grad, but he basically said like, James is still my guy, but it's always going to be Penn State.
It's Penn State.
If Penn State ever plays Virginia Tech. But I just am curious how, we're having these 80s weekends and 90s weekends. I think we have the 2000s coming up. My guess is that there is probably a 2010 weekend, which, yes, we'll have some Paterno guys too and some Bill O'Brien guys, but I'm interested to see how the Franklin crew basically looks at Matt Campbell, because I hope it's favorable. I know Denai Son is he's another guy that said like, I'm Penn State through and through. So I'm hopeful that we can all get along. But yeah, it's interesting to see the differences. I will certainly say that.
And Penn State's better when everyone is on the same page. Hey, that's going to wrap things up on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for joining us. A very interesting conversation with how Matt Campbell has accelerated the process and just able to bridge all the decades of Penn State. He is Pat Koerbler of Black Shoe Diaries. Links to his work will be down in the description. My name is Zach Seyko, your host of the show as always. If you are new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast. Pat, it's great to talk to you as always. Appreciate your perspective, your insight, and can't wait to chat with you again very soon.
Of course. Thank you as always, Zach.